She secretly signed me up for a $50,000 death challenge, 100 men against one gorilla, without telling me. She thought I wouldn't survive. I did, and I came home with one goal: revenge. Welcome to Stories by Mr. Best, where betrayal gets exposed and revenge hits hard. If you enjoy jaw-dropping twists and stories where karma doesn't miss, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. I used to think the worst betrayal would come with a scream, a fight, a shattered plate, or a slammed door. But real betrayal? It's silent. It hides behind soft kisses, gentle reminders, and a signature I never knew existed. My wife, Elena, was someone I thought I knew to the core. We'd been married 7 years. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. Turns out, while I was working long hours as a contractor to keep the mortgage paid and the fridge full, she was plotting something vile behind my back. Not an affair. Something darker. Something that nearly ended my life. It started with what I believed was a company retreat. A man in a black suit arrived at my job site with a laminated envelope. He said I'd been selected to participate in an exclusive high-paying adventure challenge, courtesy of a partnership with a high-end outdoor brand. I laughed it off at first. Then he showed me the payout for participants: $250,000 for completion, $5,000 just to show up. He claimed I'd been nominated by my wife as a birthday surprise. She's so proud of how hard you work. She wanted to do something wild for you, he said, handing me a waiver she'd supposedly filled out for me. Her handwriting was perfect. My signature was forged perfectly. The man handed me an airline ticket, a schedule, and a waiver I didn't sign. He told me it was all part of the thrill. Just pack light. The less you know, the better. I admit, I was curious. I thought maybe this was finally our breakthrough. Maybe Elena believed I deserved something bold, something big. I was foolish enough to think she still loved me. I kissed her goodbye that night. She smiled at me the same way she always had. That smile, God, it was a mask I didn't know she wore so well. She tucked a small Bible into my duffel bag and said, just in case. The flight was at 4 a.m., and by 6 p.m. the next day, I was in a jungle camp somewhere in Southeast Asia. No Wi-Fi, no signal, no clue. The place looked like something out of a dystopian survival film. Bamboo cages, armed guards, high steel fencing. And men, dozens of them. Dirty, confused, scared. Some already bruised. None of them knew what the hell was going on. It took less than 10 minutes for the horror to hit. That night, we were herded like animals into a pit. A massive steel gate slammed behind us. Then came the sound. A roar so deep it felt like the ground trembled. From the shadows emerged a silverback gorilla, fur-matted with dried blood, muscles rippling with rage. It wasn't just a test of strength. It was a game, one we were meant to lose. A screen lit up high above us. The words read, 100 men, one gorilla, $1 million to the last standing. I wasn't chosen. I was fed to it. The camera drones buzzed like mosquitoes above our heads, recording every scream, every broken bone, every drop of blood. I remember locking eyes with a man beside me. He whispered, "It's a betting arena. They pay to watch us die." That was the moment it all clicked. Elena hadn't signed me up to surprise me. She'd signed me up to erase me. And she'd made $50,000 just for the entry. The waiver? Legally binding. The death? Expected. Survival? Not part of the plan. I made it through that first night by hiding under a broken crate, smeared in mud and someone else's blood. I listened to the cries, the roars, the gut-wrenching silence that followed. By morning, 10 men were dead. The rest of us were injured, starving, or praying. Some begged for death. Others broke down laughing like madmen. I stayed quiet, focused. Every bone in my body was trembling, but my mind was sharpening. If I made it out alive, I knew exactly where I was going next. I didn't sleep. Not that first night. Not any night after. I counted days by the changes in food rations, if you could call them that. We weren't contestants. We were bait. And someone had paid my price. I didn't have time to grieve the men who didn't wake up the next morning. Their bodies were gone, dragged off by guards like trash. No ceremony. No names. Just silence and the smell of dried blood soaking the earth. I counted 90 of us left after that first night. No one spoke about it. What was there to say? We all saw what that thing did. One swipe, and a man's ribs split open like drywood. One punch, and a skull caved in like a rotted melon. We weren't facing an animal. We were facing punishment designed to entertain billionaires who'd long lost their souls. The second day, they let the gorilla rest. Instead, they made us fight each other. It was subtle at first, dwindling food supplies, no water until dusk, and throwing in weapons. Blunt sticks, knives with rusted blades, and one machete that everyone fought over until the man holding it was stabbed in the throat. The guards didn't stop it. They clapped. They laughed. They filmed it. By the third day, we all knew. This wasn't about survival. It was about blood. It was about profit. And it was all streamed live to a hidden network for men in suits and women with too much money and too little morality. I knew I had to shift from surviving to escaping, but escape wasn't an option. The perimeter was electrified. I tested it with a branch, it exploded in sparks and caught fire. There were drones patrolling even the trees. They weren't just monitoring us. They were tracking every movement, every heartbeat. The gorilla, they said, was drugged at night, only to be reactivated each day for new events. The worst part? It was smart. Too smart. It didn't attack randomly. It went after the loudest, the weakest, the ones who cried. That meant staying calm was the only way to disappear. And I was good at that. Every time I thought I couldn't go on, I remembered Elena's voice from that morning. The softness, the fake concern, the kiss on my forehead. Come back stronger, babe. I didn't know it at the time, but her bank account had already received the transfer. $50,000 to send me to hell. I clung to that rage like oxygen. I let it fester. Because if I made it out, I wasn't just going to expose her, I was going to burn everything she thought she owned. On day 5, they brought back the gorilla. But this time, it wasn't chained. It wasn't tired. It was fully awake and angry. I saw its eyes scan the pit, stopping on me for a full second. I swear to you, it could sense the difference. Like it knew I wasn't just prey, I was plotting something. We were forced to run laps around the ring, and every so often, they'd open a gate and send in a new challenge. Poisoned rats, wild dogs, or worse, another group of men with black masks, fresh and ready to prove themselves. They called them Second Wave. They were given weapons. We were not. We lost 20 more men that day. I suffered a cracked wrist when one of the masked recruits slammed a rod into my forearm. But I played dead. That's how I survived that moment. Rolled under another corpse and held my breath while his blood ran down my chest. I stayed there for what felt like an hour until the noise died down. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just whispered Elena's name and promised myself one thing. I was going to walk through our front door again. She was going to see my face. And I was going to enjoy every single second of what followed. By the end of the week, there were only 32 of us left, from 100, and the challenge hadn't even officially started yet. That's what the announcer said the next morning, his voice booming from hidden speakers like some god laughing at his ants. Tomorrow begins the official 100 men, one gorilla endurance battle. You've already proven your strength. Now prove your will. I didn't sleep that night either. The sun rose red that morning. An omen, I thought. And then the gates opened, and there it was. That monster again. But something was different. Its eyes were glassy. It stumbled a bit. That's when I realized they had overdrugged it. The beast was unstable. Not aggressive, yet, but unpredictable. One of the men ran forward, thinking it was weak, trying to gouge its eye. It crushed him with one paw. Chaos erupted. Men scattered. 2 were trampled. Another tried to scale the walls and got fried by the electric current. And me? I ducked behind a fallen tree and watched the thing pace. I saw something in its behavior fear. Not of us, but of them. Of the people watching. That's when it hit me. We weren't so different, the beast and I. Both betrayed. Both used. Both left to die in a pit so others could get rich. It was that bond, twisted as it was, that gave me my plan. Not to fight the gorilla, but to use it. If I could time its rage, if I could direct it, maybe I could create the opening I needed. And if I lived long enough, I'd make damn sure my wife knew that she didn't just sign me up for death, she signed her own fate too. They finally pulled me out on day 10. By then, I had dropped nearly 20 pounds, my beard had grown in patches, and my body was covered in bruises that would take months to heal. But I was alive. I had outlasted over 70 men, including 3 who were trained fighters. I still don't know exactly why I was extracted. Maybe I was part of a final test. Maybe the syndicate behind it saw something in me. Or maybe they realized I was worth more alive than dead. One of the guards, the only one who ever spoke English to me, handed me a blindfold and whispered, "You're out. Keep your mouth shut, and you'll get paid. Talk, and no one will ever hear from you again." They drugged me for the flight home. I woke up in the back seat of a black sedan parked 4 blocks from my house. My duffel bag, torn and bloodstained, was beside me. Inside was a fat envelope, a contract, a waiver with my forged signature, and a check made out for $5,000. $5,000. For nearly dying, for being torn to pieces mentally and physically, for being betrayed by the woman I loved. I stared at that check until my hands started shaking. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was colder. A kind of clarity that only comes when you've been pushed past every limit. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront. I was going to end this quietly, completely, permanently. When I walked up the driveway, our house looked exactly the same. The porch light flickered the same way it always had. The flower pots she loved to decorate were still there. Plastic, not real, just like her. I walked in through the side entrance. She hadn't even changed the locks. That's how sure she was that I wouldn't return. Or maybe that I couldn't. Inside, the smell of air freshener hit me. Vanilla and lavender, her favorite. The kitchen was spotless. The TV was on. She was curled up on the couch with a glass of wine in her hand, laughing at some reality show. And beside her was a man I'd never seen before. Younger, tanned. His hand was resting on her thigh. She didn't even glance up until I spoke. "Miss me?" The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. She turned, face frozen in shock, like she'd seen a ghost. And in a way, she had. I didn't say another word. Just stood there, bleeding through my shirt, eyes locked on hers. Her lover scrambled to his feet, confused, ready to play tough. But one look at me, at the dried blood, the limp, the fire in my eyes, and he backed down. He grabbed his keys and walked out without a word. "Good decision," Elena stammered. "I thought. I didn't know. They said no one comes back." "They were wrong," I said, my voice dry and steady. She started to cry. I didn't care. Not this time. I walked past her, picked up the envelope on the dining table. An invoice from a private travel agency confirming her wire transfer, the same one she'd used to receive the $50,000. The memo line said it all: 100 men/1 guerrilla entry, spouse package. My blood boiled again, but I kept my face calm. The time for screaming was over. I needed her to think I was broken. I needed her to believe that I was too damaged to retaliate. That night, I cooked dinner, sat across from her at the same table we used to share. She watched me like a deer cornered in headlights. She kept glancing toward the door, probably wondering if I was going to snap. I didn't. I smiled. I asked her about the house, about the car, about the money. She answered every question nervously, hands trembling. When she finally asked me what I wanted, I leaned in and whispered, "Nothing, Elena. I just wanted to come home." She didn't sleep that night. I did, like a baby. For the next few days, I played the part of a man returning from trauma. I limped. I winced. I said I didn't want to talk about it. She tiptoed around me, probably waiting for me to snap. And all the while, I collected things. Her phone records. The email she deleted. The receipts. The private conversations between her and her lover. I found everything. And I made copies. Flash drives. Cloud backups. One by one, I compiled a story so airtight, no lawyer on earth could talk her way out of it. The final straw came when I found a message from her to a friend saying, "He'll be dead by now. I get the money and a fresh start." I mean, I did my part. I signed the form. She signed my death warrant. She really believed she'd buried me in a pit with a monster and moved on. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I had brought a different kind of beast home. I wasn't the man she sent away anymore. And now, it was time to show her. The thing about revenge is, it tastes better when served on a clean plate. That's what I kept telling myself as I wiped down the kitchen counter, humming softly while Elena sat at the far end of the room pretending to scroll through her phone. But I could see it. Her hands were trembling, her shoulders too stiff, like she was bracing for impact every time I moved. She still didn't know what I had planned. And that was the point. I wanted her off balance. I wanted her to wonder when the knife would fall or if I even had one. But truth be told, I wasn't interested in knives. I was building something cleaner, sharper, something that would cut her off from the life she built on my name. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I smiled. That's what confused her most. She was used to anger, to shouting, to men who threw things when they felt wronged. But I wasn't wronged. I was remade. The jungle had stripped me of ego, pride, and illusions. I came back hollow but focused, like a weapon forged in fire. So I made her breakfast every morning. I fixed the broken faucet she'd complained about for weeks. I even asked about her day. Every gesture was a thread in a web she couldn't see until she was stuck right in the middle. I started with the utilities. Quietly transferred the accounts to my name. Then the property title. I'd paid for this house, every brick and nail, but she had added herself to the deed during a refinancing I wasn't even told about. A few calls, a few forged counter documents, thanks to the exact same method she'd used to sign me up for that challenge, and her name vanished. I did it all without leaving a trace. I knew which lawyers to talk to. I knew which records to tweak. And I had time, because she thought I was healing. But I wasn't healing. I was calculating. Then came her finances. She had a separate bank account. I found it in one of the emails from her lover. She bragged to him about how liquid she was now. A few strokes on her laptop while she was asleep, and I had the login. I didn't drain it. No, that would have been too obvious. Instead, I set up a recurring charity donation in her name, monthly, locked, and irreversible. The charity? A wildlife preservation fund. Specifically for endangered gorillas. Petty? Maybe. But I figured the least she could do was pay penance to the species she tried to have me killed by. By the end of the second week, she was unraveling. I caught her whispering on the phone at odd hours, her voice tight and panicked. I knew she'd been trying to reach the man she replaced me with. But he wasn't picking up, because I'd already reached him first. I sent him footage. Screenshots of her transfer receipts, messages where she promised him part of the money, and audio from a baby monitor I'd hidden in the guest room. I didn't need him to fight for her. I just needed him to run. Which he did, after sending a furious message calling her a gold-digging psychopath. That one, I printed and taped to her vanity mirror. She cried the next morning. Not loud, broken sobs. Just quiet ones. The kind that sound like air leaking from a balloon. I watched her from the hallway. She didn't know I was there. And I didn't feel pity. I felt confirmation. Her tears weren't from guilt. They were from the fear of losing control. The empire she thought she built on my ashes was cracking, one quiet step at a time. And I hadn't even pressed the real button yet. The real button was what I sent to the police. A folder. Thick. Meticulously labeled. Inside it? A forged application to an international survival game show bearing my name, my signature. Which she submitted. Her bank records showing the wire from the challenge organizers. The emails. The texts. Even a screenshot of her browser history where she Googled legal risks for deadly challenges abroad. I sent everything anonymously. But I made sure the detective in charge of the Financial Crimes Division saw it first. 3 days later, they knocked. It was a morning like any other. I was drinking coffee at the kitchen island. She was pacing in the living room, chewing her fingernails. When the doorbell rang, she froze. The knock came again, firmer this time. She turned to me with eyes wide. I said, "Better get that. Might be something important." She opened the door. 2 men in dark suits stepped forward, badges flashing. One said her name. The other said, "You're under investigation for conspiracy to commit manslaughter, fraud, and falsification of legal documents." She looked back at me in horror. I raised my mug and smiled. "Welcome home, darling." They didn't cuff her, not yet. But they escorted her to the car while she tried to scream my name. Neighbors peeked through blinds. I stood at the door, calm as ever, sipping coffee brewed in the same machine she once claimed I didn't know how to use. And as the cruiser pulled away, I closed the door. Not with satisfaction, but with purpose. Because this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the end of mine with her. They let her go after questioning. No charges, yet. She came home pale, hair undone, eyes hollow. She didn't speak a word as she crossed the threshold, just stared at me, waiting, hoping I'd explain, hoping I'd deny what she already suspected. But I didn't give her that. I simply handed her the same envelope they'd received, the one with every piece of evidence I'd collected and mailed to the station. "I assume you've seen this," I said, watching her hands tremble as she leafed through it. Each page was a dagger, and I wanted her to feel every single puncture, not just from betrayal, but from the fact that she never saw it coming. She tried the usual dance. First came denial. "This isn't real. You forged this. You're sick. This is manipulation." Then came anger. "You think you're smart? You think this'll work? You can't prove anything. You can't put me in jail just because you had a little tantrum." And then, finally, the last stage. Desperation. "We can fix this. Please." I was pressured. I didn't know it would go that far. I didn't know if you'd survive or not. I just needed out. That last sentence was the only truth she'd told me in weeks. She needed out. Not of the marriage, but of the life we'd built together. The one she never respected. The one I paid for while she looked for shortcuts. I let her sob. Let her try to touch my arm. Let her beg me to understand. But I was past understanding. I was somewhere else now, a place beyond pain, beyond emotion. I had been sent to die, survived the impossible, and come home with a mind sharper than a surgeon's blade. And now I was dissecting every inch of the woman who once laid beside me at night, whispering false dreams into my ears. This wasn't punishment. It was closure. And she wasn't ready for how permanent it would be. The next morning, I left the house early, dressed in a clean shirt, shaved, calm. I went to the local police station and asked to speak to Detective Guerra, the one whose office I'd anonymously mailed the package to weeks ago. He recognized me instantly. He'd done his homework. "You're the man from the challenge," he said under his breath. We weren't even sure if the footage was real. I handed him a second flash drive. This one had the original transmission stream, downloaded and burned by someone I met inside the pit. He'd given it to me as a thank you after I saved his life during the third night by dragging him away from the gorilla. The footage was crystal clear. There was my face, my name on the contestant list, and Elena's application file, uploaded by the event organizers. Guerra watched a minute of it, then paused the screen. "You didn't just survive. You were bait, and someone paid to throw you in." I nodded. He didn't need convincing after that. While the legal wheels turned behind the scenes, I kept quiet at home. I didn't touch her. Didn't argue. I let her spin in her own panic. She knew the cops had real evidence now. She just didn't know how deep it went. She started calling lawyers. None returned her calls. She started Googling falsifying legal documents, prison time, and spousal immunity loss. I watched it all unfold from the other side of the bedroom door, listening to her breath hitch every time a car slowed down outside. Then the second knock came. Not police this time, but reporters. A blog had picked up the leak. "Survivor of illegal death pit challenge returns home. Wife linked to secret entry." Her face was blurred, but the details were damning. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere. News feeds, Reddit threads, podcasts. Everyone wanted to know who the wife was. I watched her world close in like a vice. Every ping on her phone was another brick on her chest. She couldn't leave the house without being recognized. And when she did, she came back in tears, said someone spit on her outside the pharmacy. She stopped eating after day 3. Just sat curled up in the bedroom we once shared, clutching a pillow, rocking herself. I didn't comfort her. I didn't say a word. That was part of the plan. Because when you want someone to feel the full weight of what they did, silence speaks louder than any scream. And then came the final visit. This time, the cops came with a warrant. Fraud. Conspiracy to commit bodily harm. Forgery. Wire fraud. Intent to defraud an international agency. The list was long, and the charges stacked like bricks on her shoulders. She screamed when they cuffed her. Called me a traitor. Said I ruined her life. I didn't say a word. Just stood by the staircase and watched the woman who once kissed me on the cheek while signing my death slip get dragged out of the house she thought she'd claimed. After she was gone, I sat in the living room, turned off every light, and stared at the wall for hours. I wasn't smiling. There was no joy left in it. Just the dull throb of something closing. A door. A chapter. A part of me I no longer needed. She thought she won. She thought she'd buried me for good, but all she really did was make me unstoppable. After the trial, the world forgot about her. Not me, not the story, just her. Elena's face had been blasted across tabloids and court feeds for weeks. Her defense team tried everything, claiming she was coerced, mentally unwell, even that I'd led her to believe I wanted an adventurous exit. But the receipts, the messages, the contract with her digital signature, none of it could be erased. And when the verdict came down, guilty on 4 counts including fraud, conspiracy, and attempted manslaughter, she didn't even cry. She just stared at the floor like it had betrayed her too. She got 6 years. Not enough, if you ask me. But the real sentence was what came after. Because while she was locked away, I made sure she watched me rise. You see, during my time in that pit, when I was curled beneath corpses and praying to a god I wasn't sure still listened, I'd met a man named Ray. He was a tech guy. Said he used to run streaming systems for crypto-backed media startups. Said he had a list of IPs, a black book of buyers who funded these underground events. He slipped it into my duffel the night I escaped. Said, if you live, burn it down, or sell it better. I did both. I contacted the syndicate, not as a victim, but as an investor. That's how you move in a world that thrives on blood. You stop screaming and start buying. I told them I had footage from inside the pit. Raw. Unedited. A perspective no one else could offer. Survivor POV. Man versus beast, from inside the lion's mouth. They bit instantly. What they didn't know was, I'd already made a copy and given it to a major streaming platform under a pseudonym, the Beast Claws. It went viral in hours. Millions watched as I narrated every second of what I endured, what others died for, and what my wife signed me up to face. The world didn't just sympathize, they rallied. Petitions, campaigns, interviews. Suddenly, I wasn't a victim. I was a brand, a survivor. And Elena? Just a footnote in the credits, subject of criminal proceedings, currently incarcerated. The payout from the syndicate? I took it and used it to buy out the company that sponsored the challenge. Shut it down from the inside. Publicly, it collapsed under financial scrutiny. Privately, I squeezed every dollar from its corpse. With that money, I bought the house outright, then sold it, then bought a bigger one, on a hill, with security cameras and steel doors and no memories. I didn't need reminders of her anymore. I'd turned them into revenue. She wrote me from prison once, said she was sorry, that she missed me, that she'd found God. I never wrote back, not out of spite, but because the story was already told. There was no sequel, only aftermath. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, hearing the low growl of that gorilla echoing in my skull. I remember its eyes. How smart they were. How human. How trapped. It haunts me, not because it almost killed me, but because it helped me become who I was always meant to be. Someone no one could put in a cage again. And now, when people ask me why I never broke down, why I never screamed or lost my mind, I just tell them this. Because I brought the beast home with me. And I made him my partner. If you've ever felt like someone tried to bury you alive, remember, you're not done yet. You're just getting started. If this story gripped you like it gripped me, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear that survival isn't the end. It's just the beginning. More stories like this drop weekly, only here, on Stories by Mr. Best.